Hey friends, welcome back. I am so excited that you are joining me here. We are kicking off season 5 of the Finding Joy in Your Home podcast. Super glad and excited you're here. Of course, we actually have way more than 5 seasons. We kind of rebranded 5 seasons ago and launched over and restarted our clock at 0 episodes and have been counting it back up from there. So you'll go back into our archive and you can find hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes dating all the way back to 2015? Is this really our 10th year doing the podcast? Maybe it's our 9th year. But regardless, I'm really excited to be kicking off a brand new season here. I love season resets because it gives me time to really think about doing different series as we kick off. And I think last year I was just not able to I had just had a baby. So that actually makes sense. I think last year's season kickoff was just pre-recorded stuff and it wasn't quite as season kickoff-y. So this time, season 5, we're kicking off in a fun way. Now, of course, I'm very happy to actually just be sitting down here recording with you because as we've got the time planned out, Jason's picking up the kids from co-op and we've got the time figured out. That's the hardest thing about getting the podcast episodes recording is because the house has to be quiet for me to record. And our tripod broke a couple of days ago and we forgot. So our tripod that actually is supposed to hold our camera. And then I couldn't get the right microphone working. And it was just one of those days where like every single thing is like, is this even going to happen? And Jason's like, nope, record on your phone. We'll use this microphone. Like we're rolling with it. So if you're watching on YouTube, this is definitely not kind of our normal video setup. And oh well, we're here, we're chatting, and that's just kind of real life, which actually kind of ties in perfectly with what we're talking about today. So season 5 kickoff, we're getting back to the roots. We're getting back to the heart of what does it mean to be a homemaker? What does it mean as a woman? And we're going to talk about our definition. My definition of homemaker is probably a lot more broad than most people think of. We're going to be kind of really getting back to the roots of our home. Now, Jason and I were in the middle of a series called At the Hearth. We were doing family chats with Jason and I. We had a whole series kind of planned out, and we had a bunch pre-recorded, thankfully. But when our son Radley got burned in April, we just kind of like fell off of that completely. And then we moved in May, and we have not had any time. It's a lot harder to find the time for him and I to record at the same time. It usually just means recording late at night, and we've just been too tired for that, and it's been too hard to just coordinate that. So we do want to go back and do more of those episodes. So some of those might just be kind of sprinkled in here as we kick off our new series. And the podcast really since April has been hit or miss. We have not had weekly episodes consistently coming out. We've been doing them as often as we can, but we are back, hopefully, Lord willing, to our regular schedule now as we're kicking off this season. And let's talk about this season theme a little bit before we dive in. I'm starting to I start talking way too fast because I feel like I got to cram everything in and not make this a 3-hour long episode because then nobody would listen. So season 5 is really coming out of this inspiration for what does it mean to be a homemaker? Let's go back to our kind of roots and our foundation. There's a couple of reasons for this inspiration for this new theme. The first is that I get requests for this all the time. When we first, in fact, you guys will probably know better than I do. I'm fairly certain episode 1, maybe episode 2 of my entire podcast, it was on what does it mean to be a homemaker. That was kind of like the absolute root and foundation, or at least maybe it was one of those really, really early episodes. And back then, as I was a much younger wife, as a much younger mom, and I mean, really the genesis, some of you have been around since the very beginning of my blog that's now Finding Joy in Your Home, but was originally Young Wife's Guide. I started blogging in 2009, the year that Jason and I got married. And so 16 years ago now, and it was really those beginning years into the beginning of the podcast were really my formative years of figuring out what does it mean to be a homemaker? I was not raised with this sort of mindset. What does it mean to care for a family? And I don't think that necessarily has to fit a super rigid box of this is exactly what it looks like. So biblically speaking, what does it look like for a woman to care for her family? What does it look like to be a wife, to be a mom? And so those early years of the blog, early years into the podcast were really me walking through those things in real time. And that tends to be what my podcast is. It's me sharing, like I've shared a lot of like health journey and health struggles this year because it's literally what I've been working through in my own life. I'll talk about juggling schedules and the busyness and dealing with stress because those are things that I am working through. And I'm just kind of an outpour then. I'm sharing the things that I'm working on, what I'm going through. And so those earlier days had a lot of that, of like working through what does it mean to be a homemaker? How do we glorify God with our time? And not that I've moved past those things because those things still affect me every day, but I'm not wrestling with them in the same way. And so over time, you know, what we share, my content, it can change because of what I'm currently going through and what I'm passionate about and what I want to speak about. But I've had a lot of people say, hey, those early topics really impacted me greatly. Like, I feel like there was a whole generation of us kind of working through this stuff together at the same time. And there's a lot of people, whether you're younger and you're just finding this, or you're older and you're wrestling through this for the first time, that you kind of never went through that whole progress with us at the beginning. And so not that we're just going to like, we're not going to just redo everything. So if you've heard it all, still stay with us because we're going to have some really good discussions. And now I have the benefit of 16 years later being able to say, hey, this is what I've learned through the process. But we want to kind of go back and talk about some of these foundational topics. And I've had a lot of requests for this. So that's kind of what this series is being born out of. And then number 2, we just had our online magazine launch. So I have wanted to do, probably for 14 years, I've wanted to do a magazine. And we finally have it launched. It is inside our Joyful Home app. Currently, right now, annual subscribers get access to it. They're going to be grandfathered in because actually, maybe by the time you listen to this, we're going to have a new tier on the app that's like the magazine subscription. So you'll get access to the full app and the magazine. So if you are a monthly subscriber, we will have a monthly option for you. So, and then if you're a current annual subscriber, you'll be grandfathered into that magazine tier there. So annual subscribers, you already have access to it. And the theme for this very first magazine, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I want to go to my basics. I want to go to my roots. So the theme for this first magazine is, what does it mean to be a homemaker? Then it has 22 full-length articles in it written by me, and then various other, I think we have 12 other writers that have written articles for the magazine. And we really are just exploring a lot of topics within that. And how does time management work? And what do we do on days when we're really frustrated and when anxiety hits, and, you know, all those different things and how it plays out. And so the magazine has been really fun because that feels like it's gotten back to my blogging roots. I love writing articles. I loved being able to write articles that weren't like a series or like a book. Like, I was able to just have like different little thoughts in different articles. I wrote one that was like your Bible study toolbox and my current Bible study things I'm using. It was really fun to just be able to have, like, it didn't have to be an hour-long podcast episode. It was a more short form way of being able to write. And I have had so much fun making it. So the Homemaking magazine for now is going to be bi-monthly. Eventually, if we could get some people on board to help, I would love to make it monthly, but I have no capacity for that right now. So it's bi-monthly. So the next edition, issue number 2 will come out in October. We have a whole theme for that, which will be really fun, that I'll be announcing soon. And that's all really exciting. So this coincides perfectly our new series because I just was in the thick of writing these articles and editing the ones from other people, which has been really fun. So today, what I want to talk about, if I can find my notes, is, what does it really mean to be a homemaker? And if you don't consider yourself a traditional homemaker, a lot of times we hear homemaker and it's like stay-at-home mom. Well, that's not me. I want you, and I encourage you, if you're here, to keep listening, because my definition of what it means to be a homemaker is a lot more broad than that. And that's what we're going to talk about. So a lot of you guys have heard my story, but for those of you new here, I got married at the ripe old age. I always say that, and I think I'm very funny when I say that. At the ripe old age of 19. And I do laugh about that because I had zero zero thoughts or expectations of getting married at 19. I was not raised in a family that was like, yes, young marriage is good, like find your husband. I was typical like public school kid. I was going to college, which I did. I actually had friends who had older siblings. I remember distinctly one of my best friends, her older sister was like 3 years older than us. And so we were like midway in high school. Or maybe we were freshmen, and her boyfriend decided they were going to like go to the same college together. They were going to plan to go there. She was actually going to go to the college he wanted to go to. And I remember thinking, I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why on earth would you change all of your plans? There's no way you're staying with that guy, which she didn't. And I just thought, like, that's like, no, like I want to get married for sure. I definitely want to have a family, definitely want to have kids, but like not till after college. And throughout my high school, like I was becoming a much more serious Christian, absolutely believed in waiting until marriage for those activities, right? I know there's ears listening. Absolutely believed all that, but I just was like, people who get married young are just dumb, like just dumb. And so shock and surprise of my life that I meet Jason when I'm 16. We were working together at a grocery store, started dating 1 month after I turned 17. I was 17, he was 19. And we got engaged when I was 18, got married when I was 19. And the rest, of course, they say is history. And man, my opinions changed quickly and realized like, oh, this is it. He's the one, you know. And God is just good in his leadings too, to, you know, make me realize the differences there. But when we got married at 19, I had no idea what it meant to be a homemaker. I had no training. I had no, like, that's just not, you know, for us 90s babies and before. But, you know, all I know is my own experience. Like, we went to public school. We didn't even have home ec in our high school. We didn't have, like, there was no thoughts of, like, actually, and some of you guys, some of your parents, like, did a way better job. But, like, I just think it's very typical. Like, my parents, you know, I come from a divorced household. Both my parents worked full time. And I just wasn't interested. There wasn't this like curriculum of like, we got to teach kids how to do laundry and teach, you know, it just wasn't like, I really wasn't even expected to do that many chores. And I know that this totally varies, but I do know also that I'm not alone in this. And so when I got married, I had zero skills. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to clean. I barely knew how to do my own laundry, but didn't know like anything else. Didn't know how to like iron anything, like just nothing. And so getting married was definitely like this crash course. So that first year married, I was like, what does this mean to be a homemaker? Does this mean that I have to do all of the dishes? Like, am I supposed to do like 100% of all housework, even though we're both in school full time and we are both working full time? What is this? Like, what are my duties? What are my responsibilities? Especially because I felt like the time I have now is more time than I will ever have. I was so aware of that. Once we have kids, life will change drastically and in really good ways, but also I won't have the time that I have now or the energy. And I was just like, what does it mean? Like, what does this mean? I want to have it kind of figured out, which of course, you never have everything figured out. You become a mom, or life, you know, seasons change, or you get married and things change in ways that you don't expect. So you can't ever be like 100% prepared. But I really wanted to like figure out, what does this role look like? As we start to have children, we did know that I would stay home with the kids once we had kids. It's just what did that look like? And so this was kind of the backdrop of everything that I was really wrestling through. And I'm very excited to say that like all of my kids have more cooking. Well, not all of them, but like the older ones. The 8-year-old and above, they all have more cooking skills and household management skills than I did when I got married. So like, that's a success, right? That's a big thing, is I want to make sure that we're kind of training up this next generation. And I do think it's very classical of so many millennials that we just didn't have life skills. We were preparing for college. And we did that well. I took my SATs. I had AP classes. I did that well. I got into a college. I graduated college. Check, check, check. Oh, wait. There's so much more to real life. Like, do you know how to balance a checkbook? Do you know bank account? Do you know? I remember like when we were looking at taking out loans for college, and because neither of our parents were able to help us. We paid everything our entire way. And looking at college and being like, okay, what is a $300 repayment after college? What is a $700 a month monthly pay? Like, those numbers don't mean anything because I have no practical, how much is rent? Like, you just don't know. You don't know anything. And when you're not prepared to be an adult, and I think that's what we're seeing a lot right now with Gen Z as well, then, is just such an utter lack of knowing like basic human adult skills. So then you walk into a household and suddenly as women, we're like these managers of our households. What does that mean? How do we do that? How do we do that well? And how do we do it well for the Lord? And so here's my controversial take on it, is that if you're a woman, you already are a homemaker. And I know that's a really different view of it than so many people just think like stay-at-home moms. Like, one day when I'm a homemaker, or I'm not a homemaker, so like I can't identify with that. But God created us very uniquely to be very nurturing. Women are extremely nurturing, very caring. We have that just kind of internal nesting instinct that by and large men don't have. And so as a woman, whether you are a mom with 8 kids like I am, whether you work outside the home, you're home full time, you're a student, you're a college student, you're a high school student, you live at home with your parents, you have your own home, but you're caring for aging parents. Like, I mean, any situation that we can think of, your grandparents, any of those life seasons and stages, if you're a woman, you're already called to homemaking. It's just going to look different in different seasons. So when I was working full time, when, Jason and I were both working full time and taking full load of college. I graduated college in 3 years. He graduated in the normal 4. We were working full time during that. We were married during that. And my homemaking looked very different. I had to figure out in that season, how do we eat dinner? How do we like pack lunches so we have good food to eat? And, we never ate out back then, ever. How do we, for me, it was a lot of like figuring out, I spent a lot of time figuring out meal planning, and how do I like really good crock pot recipes so that dinner could be done, or recipes where everything's done, we just stick it in the oven as soon as I get home. What are these different things, and how do you manage a house, and how do you manage the cleaning? Because it was difficult back then because I wasn't home very much. Well, then of course now the reverse is true. We're home all the time, but then we make way more messes because we're home all the time. There's actually quite a blessing when no one's home all day. Things stay the same. When you're home all the time, everything's getting messy like 50 million times. So that's my definition, is that whether you're married or single, with you have kids or not, you work outside the home or not, you are a homemaker at your core. And I believe that because God has given you a home to care for, whether that's your own home, your parents' home, a dorm room, and there's people there that you can love. Or if you live alone, you can use your home to love and care for people, whether that's through hospitality, making food for other people. There are ways that we can view our home, whatever home that looks like, and we can love the people within it, or the people that we welcome into it, or that we can love people from that home base. So Titus 2-4 says we're called to love our families, to be self-controlled, to be kind, and to be keepers of our home. That's not optional for women. That's what women are. And depending on your season and stage of life, this will look different. So this doesn't mean we talk about Proverbs 31. It doesn't mean that you have to sew all of your own clothes from scratch. It doesn't mean you have to make Pinterest perfect meals. Does anybody use Pinterest anymore? I'm always like, Pinterest perfect. And it's probably more like Instagram perfect now, right? It simply means that you're stewarding what God has given you for his glory. And depending on unique households, unique husbands, unique women, unique children, that will look different. I firmly think that we all need to establish our own family culture, our own way of doing things. My schedule is not going to look exactly like yours, and my priorities are not necessarily even going to look exactly like yours. And so we kind of need to throw out this idea that homemaking is only about the dishes and the dusting, right? Like, it's the only thing that we can fathom, because I think that homemaking is about creating a place of peace for our family, and a place of Christ likeness in the midst of a loud and chaotic world. And I know right now there's so much heaviness in the news. There's so many heavy, hard things going on. We think of the future of our country, what is going on. We can't control any of that, but we can help the atmosphere in our own home. We can look at our own home and say, how can we create more peace today? How can we steward, excuse me, how can we steward our homes well for Christ? How can we make it more Christ-like in this home? And so how do we turn these 4 walls, whatever those 4 walls are that God has given you, into a haven, building your place into a home that your family and anyone who walks through your house can feel that presence of God. So I remember my friend Leanne Dutton, sadly, I think her blog was hacked, and I don't think you should go to it anymore. I think it was hacked by bad things. But Leanne, probably a lot of you guys know she was a speaker for us for a long time. She wrote for my blog, all this. She had a saying that has always stuck with me that I'm gonna get it wrong, but something like she wants to make her home in a way that it's like impossible to not think about God. How do we practically do that? Now, I'll tell you right now, with 8 kids under this roof, with homeschooling full time, like we're around each other a lot, and it's not 100% peaceful all the time. It's so easy to look at, kind of see a quote and you're like, that's what I want. But then you're trying to do a read aloud and the kids are fighting and yelling at each other and it's the opposite of peaceful. My home is not peaceful all the time. There are so many things that we want to work on. We were just this week with the kids really talking about kindness. We need to be kinder with one another. We need to be nicer. We don't yell at our brother when they have a toy that we want. And of course, now the boys are getting older. And so there's bigger kid fights that are happening over, not like you took my toy. And so just really working on kindness. So this is not a call to perfection. This is not like, oh, every other family out there is doing it perfectly. Jamie's family's doing it perfectly. 100% no. There are so many things that we need to work on. And like I said, this will look different from family to family. But let's think through very intentionally the season I'm in, the time God has given me, the gifts God has given me, the resources God has given me. What does it look like to make a home that is peaceful and that is more Christ-like? So what does it mean to be a good homemaker? What is a good homemaker? Okay, I don't think a homemaker is defined by necessarily how clean her house is. Now, I do think we can absolutely glorify God with the cleanliness of our house, because it's hard to have a peaceful house when it's chaotic and disgusting. We have days where I'm like, it's disgusting in here. And we're working on that. Cleaning routines are something with back to school that we're like, okay, we need to get this going better. But it's not about having like the perfectly clean house all the time. There's definitely a line where like it needs to be clean enough to serve the family, but not so clean that the family is serving the house. Right? It doesn't matter. It's not about how crafty you are. We can use our crafty skills. I'm a crafty person. We can use our crafty skills to serve the Lord. But it's not about achieving, these perfect cooking goals. It's not about the perfect sourdough bread. But if baking sourdough bread is one of those ways that you are serving your family, all praise to God. And if sourdough's not your thing and you do other things, praise be to God in that as well. So here is what a good homemaker is. Are you ready for the exhaustive list? Number 1, she keeps her eyes fixed on Christ daily. Number 2, she intentionally sets priorities that glorify God. And number 3, she builds a home that nurtures her family's hearts and not just their stomachs. So some days that means you let the dishes sit while you go on a walk with your kids. I actually just had to make that decision earlier this week. I'm like, I really wanted the house like super clean. We're trying to go walking 3 times a week. Leave the house clean. And I had dinner in the crock pot. I was doing pretty good. And I was like, if we could just get the house clean and then we can go walking, like we'll come home to the nice clean house and the dinner in the crock pot and we just went walking, like it's ideal. Well, school went way longer. It wasn't happening. So we did kind of a quick pickup and I was like, oh well, we want to go walking. We have to be back by this time. We're going and we're just leaving the house as is. We'll deal with it when we get home. And that was the right decision that day. There's other days where we want to go do fun things, or we want to go do this, or I have priorities because I want to get my punch needle out tonight, or I want to sew or quilt. Like I've got these plans, but like the house really needs the attention. And we really in our current culture can swing because we see the damage of you have to have a perfect house and it's about appearing perfect. No. So then we swing to the other side thinking, whatever, mess doesn't matter. That's also no. We absolutely can glorify God in our cleanliness, in our cultivating better routines. I'm not a natural housekeeper. It's not my natural gifting. I'm not a perfectionist who's like super irritated if the rug is slightly out of place. Like I wish I was more that way. Although I know people who are like that are like, I wish I was less that way. So I really have to work at it. I really have to fight. I'm a very creative personality compared. And so I have to really work at like, no, we got to be a little bit more orderly. We got to figure out how to do this a little bit better. Like that's my personal struggle. Someone else might struggle with trying to be too perfectionistic. And so they don't ever let their kids paint or get anything out to play because it's going to mess things up. So we gotta walk this balance. And that's where asking the Lord for wisdom, asking your husbands, sometimes they can see it better than we can. They can see our faults if we're open to listen and say, hey, where do you think we kind of need to work on, within the house? You might be able to be like, well, say yes to the kids sometimes. Or, you know what? We need to say no sometimes and kind of buckle down. So wherever you're at, this is why it's a hard conversation because you really can't say, hey, here's your exhaustive list. Here's how you're going to be a great homemaker. No, we need to have our eyes fixed on the Lord. We need to set those priorities before the Lord. And we need to do that with joy. And that's what I was telling Jason. We've had this is another episode I could talk about. Well, we've had a rough start to this school year. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. First day back, I was like, oh no, I can't do this. I've been homeschooling for like 9 years. But that day I was like, oh, this is it. Homeschooling's over. I can't do it. Jason's like, no, it takes a little while to get into it. I'm like, okay, no, you're right. We had a very long break. And so, yes, we gotta plod our way back in, right? And so I have no idea where I was going with that point. That's a problem when I go off my notes and then I just start talking. And then mom brain sets in and I'm like, there's no thoughts. There are no thoughts in my brain. They just have left. Don't know what my point was. So I'm just going to skip it and I'll probably come back to it later. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, that's what my point was. All right, let's get back to my list. Okay. So Proverbs 31 woman, Titus 2, very inspiring, very biblical, very good to look at. But let's talk Proverbs 31, especially. She's not a checklist, right? We don't all need to go buy fields and wake up before dawn and go plow it ourselves and be knitting the sweaters. If you want to do any of those things, great. If they fit into your family priorities, great. Instead, let's focus on the heart of what she does. What does she do? She serves her household with joy, wisdom, and strength rooted in the Lord. And so as we prepare to be biblical homemakers, we look at it and say, how can I love my house the way it is today, the people in it? How can I be content with what the Lord has for me? We can look at it and say, you know what? The Proverbs 31 woman, she serves her household with joy. She serves her household with wisdom, and she has strength that's rooted in the Lord. And sometimes you'll hear, it's very popular for people to kind of make fun of Proverbs 31 and be like, oh yeah, we can't possibly do all that. She had servants. And it's like, it's true. And that was their culture. And she had servants that were doing things. But when you look at like, if, how many people who've had servants before and they just sit back and kick their feet up and never do anything. That's not what we see though. We see the Proverbs 31 woman who was working dawn till dusk for her family, for the good of her family. And she was doing it with joy, so much joy that her family praised her in the gates because she was caring so well for them. And it's not just because she was busy and active and doing these things. More so, it's because she was doing that with that joy and that wisdom and that strength rooted in the Lord. If she didn't have servants, then we would have seen that Proverbs 31 list look a little bit different because she would have been actively doing all of the cooking and the cleaning and all of these things. And her list would have looked different, just the way that my list and your list can look different. And we're both joyfully serving the Lord. That was my point. Is I was telling Jason with this crazy week that I just need to have more joy. I need to wake up and say, today might be tough and I'm going to have joy. And we've been working through, I told you, talking with the kids, having more kindness. And so I sat everybody down the next day and I said, hey, you know what? I've kind of been having a hard week. I was losing patience. And actually we had a cold that worked through our family. So like I felt awful, which was definitely part of it. And I was like, you know what? But today, like I'm choosing joy. We're going to have a joyful day. We're going to tackle our work with diligence and joy. We're going to go on a walk later and like, let's just choose joy. Let's just choose that. And that is like all week. I'm choosing joy today. And like we have that choice regardless of external circumstances. All right. Okay, that's where we could get into so much more. That's where I'm going to leave you at today, though. What does it really mean to be a homemaker? I wish I could just give you like the part of my brain that just wants like a checklist. I'm like, oh, just like we need a checklist, but it's not that simple. And nor is following the Lord. Being faithful as a Christian is not just a simple checklist. It is wisdom gained by experience through prayer, and just saying, Lord, what does that look like for my family? What does it look like? I'm sorry. Apparently this cold is, you start talking a lot and the cold, like the stuff in my lungs start coming up. Lord, what does it look like to serve you diligently today? How can I have joy today despite external circumstances? What does it mean to serve my family with wisdom, joy, strength? And Lord, help me to do that. It's not about perfection, but, and I tell my kids this all the time with school, especially with math, you're not expected to know everything. You're not expected to walk into 7th grade math and be perfect at it. You are learning. So it's not about perfection, because I have one kid in particular who's like, I messed up one problem. I can't do this. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. Well, ladies, let's tell that to ourselves, right? It is about progress. It's about our progress as homemakers. And are we leaning in? And absolutely, there are so many skills to learn and to cultivate that will make our life as homemakers easier. If you struggle with cleaning routines, if you struggle with cooking, that's a really big one. I spent a lot of years really working on that, and I still am working on it. But are there things, do you need to be in your Bible more? Do you need to learn what it means to have a joyful heart? There are so many things that we can dig in and say, I'm going to learn these skills. I'm going to get better at these things, because it makes the practical parts of homemaking a lot easier, which, you know, is a podcast for another day. All right. So we're going to leave it there. Again, I say we're going to leave it, and then I keep talking about even more things. So I'm going to leave it there for real. Thank you so much for joining us now back here for season 5. We have some really fun topics coming up. Lord willing, we're going to be able to sprinkle in some of those family chats with Jason again, because those have been really popular. And we have some really fun stuff and some fun chats coming up this year. So thank you, ladies, so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys back here next week for the next episode.